We're now back in open session. I believe, Mr. McLaughlin, you had got my attention before we took a recess. We'll let you go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rhodes, my concern this weekend, I've received probably 8, 9 different calls concerning the redistricting. And while I observe and study the map real good and know that we do have a percentage that is somewhat favorable to the Justice Department in District 2, being in 50%. I was looking with Mr. James a few moments ago with actually the population of the black versus white population. And that population was stalling to me, was sort of close. 10 years ago in District 2, I want to think the percentage was somewhere majority minority being 55, 56%, at least that. And when you look at 55, 56% majority minority, then and that was at the beginning, then you look at it now, you're talking 50%. And then the population seemingly to be somewhat closer now. That was a concern. That was a concern of my constituents. That was a concern of mine, as I previously told you. I would like to have seen and would like to see a larger percentage of majority minority for that district. And while I do understand that you mentioned the other population, and I think that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%. While there has never really been an accurate calculation of how others tend to vote, now it's being given to me, and through some, you can make statistics to be what you want it sometimes, but to some other statistics that others don't vote exactly with the majority or minority. So that's a great concern. And so I certainly would like to see a little tweaking in that, but I'll let you respond.
Thank you for those comments. Number one is we will go back and look at exactly what the stats were in District 2 back at 2000. As far as the retrogression test, what the Department of Justice will look at is what the numbers were in 2010 in the existing district. And I'm going to go back up to those and just real quickly. District 2, again, the existing district black percentage was at 48.9 before we changed anything. So this has actually been increased almost 1.5 percentage points. That is what the Department of Justice uses for a retrogression test. Whether those numbers actually were reduced in the redistricting process, in our case, what's being proposed with Plan 1B, the black percentage actually has gone above what it was at the end of 2010 in the existing districts. So this would pass the retrogression test. We have discussed this with our outside legal counsel. It does meet that criteria. So we feel good about this number. We do understand that the minority percentage needs to be as high as possible. We're also trying to balance that with not totally throwing the existing boundaries out the window at the same time. There are ways, admittedly, that the percentage black can be increased, but it does start to affect the incumbents, and it certainly leads to a map that is not as compact as what we have right now proposed. So we'll certainly look at these stats, and we'll also if the board directs, look at some additional scenarios to try to get the percentage up in District 2.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to that as well, Mr. McLaughlin, while there's no magic number in terms of what the right number is, because it's over the 48.9% by enough of a margin, it passes the retrogressive test. But we've looked further too, and we looked at effective voting strength. And James has some numbers that he might share with you at another time, or with a full board at another time as well, that looks at the percentage of folks who actually go to the polls and the effect and the number of registered voters. And I think you will find in both District 1 and in District 2 that the effective minority voter strength is very high. In other words, the African American population turning out to the polls was actually very surprising to me in relation how high it was in relation to the white or other voters who were turning out to the polls. And so in addition to looking at the raw numbers, I think if you consider the voter strength in terms of who actually turns out to the polls, it'll even bolster that 50.3% to a higher effective rate.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gash, and then Beth, and then Mr. James.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to comment on District 5. Let me say, James, I think you've done a good job in breaking down these districts. I know it's been a challenge, and you're not going to make everybody happy. The concern I have is the same concern I expressed before, and that is you are taking more of the municipality of Winnable out of District 5, and I have heard from residents of Winnable on several occasions that they would like to keep as much of their municipality in the same district that they possibly could. So again, please keep that in mind. My second question is, will one of the public hearings be held in Winnable?
As staff is proposing right now, yes, that's the intent. Okay. We have 4 locations we're considering if you direct us to go there. I would really like to
make sure that we do that to get the input from the citizens over there and make it very convenient for them.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Bill.
I was just going to make a motion, and I don't know that that's what we want to do right now, but make a motion that we move forward with the districts as they are so that we can go with the timeline that you had put forward.
Is there a second, and then later discussion? Was there a second?
Second, yep.
All right, now for further discussion, Mr. James.
The only thing I don't quite understand, James, look at District 2. There are 14,000 some odd minorities, or blacks rather, and there are 10,000 something. That's more than 50%. I mean, minority. I don't quite get that. 14,000 something. Why? Why are this other group that you don't remember, that they must be Spanish, why are they considered to be white? Is what I'm saying.
They're not. We have them broken.
How are you picking them in there?
We have them split up: white, black, other. And on the screen right now, you can see white percentage flat 39%, black 50%, other a little bit above 10%. So again, 50, 40, and 10, a total of 100%.
Yes, but that 10%, you're not considering them at all, then, are you?
As far as the Department of Justice is concerned, we're looking at the black percentage here for the majority minority.
Well, you're taking but that is for the entire group, is what I'm saying. I don't, maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about. Maybe but I think I'm
right at half the people residing in the Plan B District 2 are black.
The what now?
Half of the people
That's,
residing in District 2 are black.
Yeah, but then you're counting all those others white, and they're not.
We're not counting them as white, we're counting them as other.
Well, what's others?
Everything other than black and white. And that's not a funny response. That is Asian, mixed race. And again, this is self-reported, Mr. James. So when folks fill out their census forms, if they don't consider themselves black or white, There's a lot of other categories, everything else we've put together as an other race.
No, it's a known fact there are hundreds, there are thousands of Spanish in my district. They don't vote. Let's face it. I work at the polling place. I can work out there and where there are thousands voting and there are hardly none vote. But I support that motion. What am I talking about? I support your motion. Go ahead.
He just corrected you, ma'am, and he said they didn't vote, so you should be satisfied with that.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I'm not.
They don't
I'm not
vote.
dissatisfied. Mr. James, this in view of what Commissioner James was just saying. You know, looking at that District 2, the whites is 10,901. That's 11,000 white. And then you look at the black population, it's 14,000. So that's 3,000 difference. If now again, getting back to what our attorney said about the voting strength, and I keep saying this, and I shared this with you earlier, that I would like to have know, if you could get this for me as soon as possible. I would like to know the percentage at the beginning of the 10 years ago of the percentage of the white compared to black at the beginning, and also the percentage that we had at the beginning. I know what you said at the end in 2010. I got that figure. It was less, but I would like to know that, and I can get a clear understanding. Thank you very much.
And Mr. McLaughlin, we certainly can have some of that historic data available at the public input sessions too.
Yes, sir.
We'll have plenty of handouts and information at that time too.
All right.
Any further discussions? If not, do you understand your motion?
No, what's the motion?
All right, read the motion, Madam Clerk.
Motion is to move forward with the revised district plan as presented and establish the public meeting schedule.
Are we saying that we agree with the plan 1B or just,
1B to be presented for the public hearings, Ethan,
okay?
as I understand the motion.
Right.
That's right.
You're not yet adopting a map.
We're not adopting a but we're saying move forward with this plan, and then after we get input,
And this
is the way I understand
this is
it.
vital for the Department of Justice package to show that ample opportunity was given for public input, and we're suggesting that there be 4 locations considered for these input
It's
sessions.
kind of like our budget. This is our approval to send this forward for public hearing.
Correct.
That answer your question, Ethan?
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, you ready to vote?
Yeah.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
we do have 4 locations under consideration. I would like at least to get a nod from the board on this. North Pitt High School, this auditorium here at the county office complex, Winterville Town Hall, and Aiden Grifton. And they're Aiden Grifton High School. There's a number of reasons why we went through that. Centrally located, it's along areas, as Mr. Garris has mentioned, areas where some of the boundaries have shifted. We feel like this is in a kind of centrally located area for folks to come out and view this. The other part of that is we're going to have all this information online too. If people can't make it out and they have access to the internet, they can provide comments online to these maps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How did you arrive at 4 instead of 3 or 2 or 5?
Through talking with Deborah Stagner, we looked at least having one of these meetings in each one of the super districts. And we do that, plus we have an additional one here in this office building. So nothing really magical, but again, she's advised that it really wasn't necessary to go take it on the road. We felt like it was, just given the number of changes.
Just out of courtesy to the voters in the Version District, I was thinking that you went to Aiden, Grifton, which is Winterville, and then here, and you got the southwestern part of the county, Farmville, which is probably District 4 is top of one of the 6 districts, and not have one there. I was just wondering how you wrote that.
If you'd like for us to go to Farmville, we certainly can. And that's why we wanted to make sure the board was comfortable with these locations.
Well, I don't know that the board would think
I think you need to go.
my arguments has any merit or not. That's my reason for asking.
I'd rather know now. We can go ahead and factor that right in.
Would
if
it
you'd
be the
like for us
pleasure
to
of the
go
board to
Farmville.
have 5 public hearings
Yes, I
in?
think you need to go to farm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The big air out there.
Add it.
All right, what's next?
Okay, next, item 5, under items to report, we have a brief report from Noel Lee and Alan Everett concerning the Winfield Rural ISO survey. ISO stands for Insurance Service Organization.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
The manager had asked me to give you a quick update on the ISO process taking place in the Winfield Rural. We'll tell you that the survey was completed June 15th. We did have representation from our office there to assist the Winfield Rural with anything that they may need from OSFM. As say everything went good. Attached in your agenda is the ISO process of how the whole process starts and follows through. We'll tell you upon completion of the ISO survey in Winterville, the OSFM inspector, field inspector, would not speculate at all on what the results of that grade would be.
Noel, can you, OSFM, Office of
State Fire Marshal's office. I apologize for you. We live in a world of acronyms a lot of times, and so I do again. The office, State Fire Marshal's office in Raleigh, I was informed this past week that they have already received the field inspector's report, and they are reviewing that now in Raleigh. Once that is completed, they will be sending that to the ISO, the Insurance Service Organization in New Jersey, by August 1st. That is the deadline. They work on the first of the month. It has to be, the surveys have to be sent, and then it falls back into that progress. The office, State Fire Marshal's office reported that ISO should be posted and notify the insurance industry by December 1st of the ISO grade that Winfield Rural has received.
Any comments? Beth, then Jimmy.
I'm going to, first let me say, so we've got 1, 2 more stops for it to be reviewed as far as the timeline is concerned.
It's being reviewed right now in Raleigh.
That's what I mean. And then it's going to go
to New Jersey.
Exactly. But, so that's 2 more reviews that it's got to go to. And then we can't even hope to get our report back before December the 1st. Is that correct?
There is a possibility we may know the grade prior to that.
Okay.
But it will not be posted with the insurance industry until December 1st.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to propose is that with this information and this timeline, that we, the staff with the attorney or whoever needs to have input, do a resolution letter, and let's send it to each one of these stopping places where our report is going. I know many times they say, you know, we'll get it back by such and such a time, but it either sits on a desk or there are 5 or 6 ahead of it or whatever. But based on the responses we have gotten from our citizens and how this has caused a lot of turmoil in the increase in insurance, and it certainly was not the citizens' fault that this happened. So I would like very much for us to compose a resolution like that and just simply say that it is imperative that this get done as soon as possible.
So you making that as a motion?
If I need to, yes, I am making it as a motion.
I'll second. All right. And
now let me ask one question. Noel, with your knowledge of these organizations, will that help us or hurt us?
I don't think it will hurt you.
Okay, fine.
I
know some people get turned off by a little pressure.
That is one thing we want to definitely be sure that it doesn't sit on somebody's desk.
I just want to say that I'm just kind of turned off that prior to this information coming to us for this separation, none of us as commissioners got any heads up based on how this was going to affect our citizens. And I really felt like we should have gotten that prior to that even coming to us. So I don't mind being proactive on this, and I think all of us owe that to, I mean, it certainly can't hurt, I don't think.
I don't think it will hurt you.
Tom, Eugene, Dave,
What do you want?
Melvin, vote.
Vote.
If you're gonna vote,
Yeah, if
you
you
don't
want me to vote, I'll
abstain.
vote.
all right. Next order of
Hey, let me
business.
ask one question.
Yes, sir,
Please.
Mr. Gary.
I know you, hey, Noel, I know that you said that we could not get any kind of indication as to what the result was going to be as far as the rating is concerned, but do we know what our point score was?
That's what I'm saying, that
They
once
don't-
they
they won't tell us
complete
that
in
either.
Raleigh, there is a possibility they may tell us then,
Okay.
but there's no guarantee.
What
of that.
was the scale? Was it 100 points?
There's 100 points, and
Okay,
then it's
fine.
broke down from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Only the people in New Jersey know that. All right,
Okay,
next.
item 6 is Kathy Booker's June 2011 tax collection report and her annual settlement report.
I would like to request your attention to the collection report that was provided in your packet, and also to note that in addition to the June 2011 collection report, there's an annual settlement statement at the very bottom of that report as well. The combined collection rate for 2010 taxes through June 30th, 2011 was 95.66%, and that is a decrease of 1.34 as compared to the rate of 97% last year. The staff has worked diligently and will continue to work diligently on the collection rate. They continue to pursue all outstanding taxes through the necessary enforcement remedies available through the North Carolina general statutes. Are there any questions about the report?
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
All right, let's vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Items for consent, you have 12 items on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ready to vote? Thank you. All right, under item for discussion, number 1.
Mr. Chairman, you have a voter ID bill issue on there that's been requested by Commissioner Glenn Webb. Basically, it's page 113, in response to Governor Perdue's vetoing of House Bill 351 that dealt with an act to restore confidence in government. And this bill required that voters provide a photo ID before they were allowed to vote. And if Mr. Webb had any comments he wanted to add.
Well, I'm obviously in support of this. I think that we should preserve the integrity of our voting system. I think that that our voice should be heard on this issue. And the opposition I've heard was that it would cost too much, but on our level. However, funding's provided within the statute to cover cost of IDs. And then I heard someone on the radio the other day say it was unconstitutional. But if you look at the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, it says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And in Section 2 it says the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. None of that covers a voter ID. No one is stopped from getting an ID based on color, condition of previous servitude, or any other thing. Anything else you can think of, they're not stopped from getting an ID. So people can obtain IDs. Most people have them. I deal with people in poverty daily in my job, and everyone I dealt with has had an ID in the past 13 years I've been in law enforcement. Everyone's been able to offer me an ID when I needed one to identify them. And if they didn't have it with them, they had it somewhere and we got a hold of it. So I just think it's common sense to preserve the integrity of our voting system and support this, overriding this veto, because to do nothing leaves us wide open for fraud that's happened in the past, and I think as a board we need to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I was probably the one that Glenn was alluding to when I was discussing this with him. What broached me was a couple of questions, and he might have answered those, or don't think he has conclusively, but I asked him about where our local county, I think I conferred with Scott along this, whether or not our local county had had any fraud within the voting elections. I don't believe we've had too much of that, and there might have been some on the state. And I also broached Glenn from the idea of what the cost of this was. I find no problem at all with identity voter or whatever it is, and he's absolutely correct. We've got all sorts of ID identifications for various and different things. But I was concerned about if it was going to be a cost that would go back to the taxpayers. Things like I read, Glenn, one presentation of somewhere where it was going to be a cost that would be almost prohibitive for this. Now, are you sure that this bill says the cost will be nominal, or is it going to say the cost will be taken up by the user? Do you have any idea with you?
I can tell you exactly what it says, because I got a copy of the bill.
All right, maybe that's the question I need answered then.
It says here, well, unless our attorney already knows
No,
the
both
answer.
of you, that's all
That's
right.
fine. Section G within Part 8 states that the State Board of Elections shall provide each county Board of Elections issuing North Carolina voter identification cards with the necessary equipment, forms, supplies, and training for the production of the North Carolina voter identification cards, and shall maintain such equipment.
So there's no cost to the person to receive it, is that what you're saying?
It doesn't appear that way. There would be, in terms of county costs directly, it would be staff time. In terms of state
Well, I
costs,
understand
it
that.
would be all of that
Okay.
equipment, but there's no provision for cost to the user.
Now, that answers my questions. I believe we had Melvin, and then Tom, and then Beth. Anybody else? Gene?
Yeah.
Wait, not right now. Hold it right there. Get in line. Ephraim, I got you too. Melvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say that I'm very appalled that my fellow commissioner and friend, Glenn Webb, would entertain such a motion to disenfranchise the minority voting strength of this county. And this has always been the case that you did not have to have a voter ID to vote, and that bothers me. It bothers me. It reminds me of taking me back to the era of Jim Crow. The Pitt County NAACP stood firmly against this bill that they wanted Governor Perdue to override this, and I personally stand behind that. I think that any time we can have our citizens of Pitt County vote without having to go through all of this ridiculous talking about ID stuff, and then you're going to come up with something else soon. So I'm certainly against this, and I stand firmly about that. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Melvin. I believe Dr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've served on this board for a long period of time, and there has been no time, to the best of my recollection, where this board has proposed to interfere with the relationship between the governor and the General Assembly. It is, in my opinion, not the proper thing to do to interfere or proposed interference between the governor and her veto and the General Assembly and their passing bills. I just do not believe that we should get involved in proposing to override a veto of the governor of North Carolina. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ephraim, I believe you were next.
I think the question I had was how much it's going to cost has been answered.
Anything else, Ephraim? Beth, I believe you indicated you.
One question I have, would previously registered voters who don't have a photo ID, would they have to come in to the Board of Elections and go through that process?
Yes.
Yes, the answer to that.
And Dave Davis has been schooled on this as well. Would you agree?
What would happen, as it states in the or in the proposed bill, is that they could receive ID either through the DMV, where they could get a driver's license or just an identification card. But also, what the bill states is that we would have to, in the county Board of Elections offices, set up basically a station where people could come in and get a photo ID, only if they do not have a driver's license.
Okay, and the I know that we've heard the comment about the minority vote, but I've thought about older people. There are older people who do not have younger family members who, have always been very active as far as voting and that sort of thing is concerned, unless they have someone to help them through this process. I'm not sure that it would happen. And when we're registered, we get a voter registration card, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
And when we go in to vote, I always get the third degree, even though I know everybody that's sitting there. So, I think an ID is an excellent requirement. I'm not sure that the photo ID is something that I could support. Thank you.
Jim and then Glenn.
Well, I was just going to make a couple of observations myself. I am supportive of the resolution. I don't think we have a motion yet, but I'm supportive of it because to me what it does is protect the voter integrity of our system. I am very, very supportive of anyone who has a right to vote, and I encourage every citizen to make sure that they vote. But the whole objective here is just simply to make sure that those who are not registered to vote, those who are not qualified to vote, that they do not vote. The bill is pretty broad as far as identification is concerned. You can use a driver's license, you can use a special identification from the DMV if you don't have a driver's license. You can have an identification card issued by a branch, department, agency, or entity of this state or any other state or of the United States. A United States passport, an employee identification card issued by any branch, department, agency, municipality, board, authority, or other entity of the state. So you could use your Pitt County ID card as proof that you are eligible to vote. You can use a United States military identification card, a tribal identification card. So there are many options that you can have here. And the other thing is that if you do go to the Board of Elections and get the ID from the Board of Election, the bill plainly states that no fee shall be charged or collected for the application for or issuance of a North Carolina voter identification card. So I don't see where it hinders anybody that is legally qualified to vote from voting. What it does hinder, though, is to make sure that those who are not qualified to vote don't vote.
Glenn and then Tom.
I thought I was in there.
All right, hold on just a minute. Mr. James, I'm sure overlooked you.
Thank you. I want you to know that I wholeheartedly support Commissioner Johnson. We're in something that we got no business being in. I'm not trying to interfere. I'm not trying to interfere with our outfit in Raleigh because I don't like a lot of the things they're doing now. But I think we need to have left this thing alone and let them solve their own problems. Oh, some of us say amen. But that's it.
Thank you, Mr. James. Now,
I don't know, but I'm telling you, we ought to sell for this thing.
Now we go back to Glenn and then Tom.
Well, I'm just happy to be serving and to be able to witness up here those two agreeing on something. But
we do agree sometimes.
As for interfering with the General Assembly and the governor, it's no interference to the General Assembly and the governor because it's not binding to them. It's an opinion. And it is our problem because it's our citizens that we're trying to look out for. So, I mean, it's not we're not saying by passing this that the governor has to do what we say. The governor's got her own mind. And in my opinion, she ain't been that great in Pitt County anyway, so I'm not that much worried about our relationship with her. But as to being disenfranchised, I'm also appalled that would be insinuated that I would seek to disenfranchise anybody. If anything, this bill enfranchises everyone that votes because it supplies opportunity, it supplies the ID that you need, and it supplies the voter, the Board of Elections to assist the people. So there is no stumbling block here to anyone, and so I am equally appalled that would be insinuated that race has something to do with my opinion on this, because the only thing that it has to do with is the integrity of our system, preserving the Constitution as written, and making sure when a person votes that their vote actually counts and isn't canceled out by fraud or other means. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
All right, now, Dr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I'm really concerned about this proposal. So far as the citizens of Pitt County are concerned, I do not believe there has been any evidence of fraud in voting. And our director can either confirm that or not confirm it.
In Pitt County, we have not had any reported cases of voter fraud. The closest we've come are 2 instances where individuals tried to vote twice. In one instance, it was an elderly lady who just did not have all of her faculties and had forgotten she'd voted by absentee earlier. Other case was a gentleman who had a substance abuse problem and had forgotten he had voted by absentee. But in as far as voter fraud cases, no, sir, we have not had any reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our director has indicated no problems of fraud in Pitt County. I see no reason for this motion.
I might have missed somebody, but I believe Jimmy and Glenn and Mr. James.
I want to make a substitute motion.
All right, sir.
I move that we take no action on this particular motion nor bill.
I second.
All right, now in discussion to that, Mr.
Well,
Gadd.
I have some discussion. I don't know if it's not related to that particular motion, but I have some discussion. First thing I'd like to say is I don't understand the idea that has been presented that we are not supposed to let the folks in Raleigh know what our position is. I don't consider this interfering. I consider it just simply letting them know what our position is. We are constantly lobbying our legislative team up there for items that we support and that we won't. So I don't see any difference in this item. The second point that I would like to make is even though some are indicating that having some kind of voter ID is totally far-fetched and ridiculous, according to the information I have, there are at least 25 states that currently require some form of identification to vote. So, many states are already doing it. Well, my statement does not say photo. It simply says identification, so I'm going to just read that statement.
That's why I was asking you, because I had
Glenn.
checked.
Well, I can't support the substitute motion to sit on the sidelines. Again, we're elected to go to bat for the people. The people want it. And I think that we should make our voice heard and not sit here and just submit to Raleigh every time they do something.
All right, we're voting on the substitute motion. Everybody understand the substitute motion?
To do nothing.
Take no
That's
action.
right, take no action.
All right. Well, the substitute motion passes. Okay, that defeats the original motion, I assume. What's next?
Next, you have under items for discussion, number 2, Fire Service Districts, a presentation by Noel Lee and Janice Gallagher to give you an update on this continued discussion that started basically in the budget workshops and prior to that with the town of Bethel request for the Bethel Rural District.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, as Scott just mentioned, during the Board of Commissioners meetings on June 6th and 7th, some board members suggested moving forward with further consideration for fire service districts. Janice has worked very hard and developed a process and timeline for the creation of fire service districts, and that has been included in your agenda packet. And the timeline, I think the timeline is a very important part, along with the matrix, to show the period of time that things have to take place. Also within your agenda packet is a spreadsheet of the departments where the response districts are greater than the actual current fire protection districts or voted in taxing districts. Currently at this time, this is just being presented as discussion, but if you desire for us to move forward with the creation of fire service districts, we would recommend to you to authorize and direct county staff to follow the legal process proposed timelines for the creation of fire service districts and those fire response districts that desire to have a service district.
Dr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm most concerned in this proposal of the time it would take to carry out such a plan. It appears to me that it's going to take a whole lot of staff time to do this, and I think there are lots of other things that staff needs to be doing. So I would stand with that feeling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
You know, we talked about this in our budget, and I think we need to investigate because some Edgecombe County, several counties do have this type of thing. And somebody has got to ring in some of these fire departments. I hate to say it, but it's true. The taxes are very high, and therefore I move that we investigate the operation of a service area for the fire districts. And I don't know for Pitt County, and not put this into motion, but I think we need to investigate and learn more about it before we just kick it out and not do anything.
All right.
I
Beth,
second that motion.
Lynn, Melvin, then Jimmy.
I want to say something. You called on me.
No,
I
you
did
second that, that's enough.
Oh,
Go ahead,
please.
Beth.
I want it stated clearly that this really doesn't change the fire districts themselves.
No.
In other words, I want the citizens to understand that and the fire people to understand that too. All this is going to do, I hope, and all we're doing is saying, please explore it and bring it back to
That's
us
right.
so we can see what effect it will have. Because over the years that I've been here, there's something coming up almost all the time, and I feel like relative to this, and I think that this will help make it more uniform and easier for us to deal with concerns and problems as far as the county is concerned. And I think all of our citizens are going to end up benefiting once we get the information. But this is just a motion for you all to pursue it and come back to us with some type of plan.
The final decision will still rest.
Yes, but I'd like for it to be as soon as possible. I don't want it to be one of those things that
That's right.
drags on forever either. Thank you.
Glenn, Melvin, Jimmy.
I agree with this. I think that if we don't do it, we'll be looking at what we did during the last budget cycle.
That's right.
And then again, we'll be having to choose whether or not to raise taxes. And if we do choose to raise taxes, we'll only be raising them on some of the people who receive the service instead of everyone that has some skin in the game having an opinion on this. So I think if you receive the service, you should pay for it, and that this is a more fair way of doing things. So I would support it.
Melvin.
I'd like to hear from our attorney. I saw the name on the document. Attorney, please.
In terms of the process, I think the motion will accomplish what's been outlined before you, which today was to seek full board action. Certain board members, through your budget negotiations and even thereafter, had directed this, but I was in search of full board action to tell us to move forward. And I think the motion that you have on the table does that. We can bring back to you on August 1st additional data and the actual impact and effects, as long with a clearer identification of which fire departments and response areas will most benefit from a service district and who would like to have that service district. So I think this gives us the green light to work closely with the fire departments to seek their input and to come back to you with additional information so that you can then direct us to prepare a more formal report, if you so choose, based on that data, to keep this process moving forward.
All right, Jimmy.
My comments are very simple. I think that this is a good thing to do because, number one, it makes sure that everyone who receives the service is paying for it. And then the second thing it does is make all 18 of these fire districts consistent. My one question, Madam Attorney, or my observation, you've probably already observed this, but I would, or we need to understand how Candlewick Sanitary District plays into this, because on page 118 it says that the territory within city limits or sanitary districts may not be included in the proposed CSD unless approved by their governing body. So I guess we'd have to go to them and get them to approve this.
That is correct.
Okay,
We
thank
cannot
you.
impede on the turf of a municipality or a sanitary district without their permission.
Okay,
Anything else, Jimmy?
that's it.
Scott, I believe you want to say something.
Just wanted to point out and reiterate, I think the point's been made, just want to reiterate the benefit and the flexibility of a service district in terms of setting that tax rate if the area is bigger than the 5-mile tax district. And also, down the line, if you want to adjust and move the response lines, right now with the fire protection lines as they are, it's almost impossible, difficult to move response lines. If you have service districts in place, it would be a whole lot easier to adjust service lines among the 20 different volunteer fire departments, if that is the desire of the different departments and the Board of Commissioners. So, and we did want to point out that we propose opening this up to all 20 of the districts,
Yes.
not just the
I want to
8.
tell Jimmy that.
Okay.
Jimmy that.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, but I know, but this agenda thing here says that of the 25 districts, 18 districts have fire protection districts.
But we won't include all 20 of them on this.
All 20 of them. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all
Then all
20
the
will be
citizens will
consistent.
get the same protection, yes.
What we would do is ask the different departments, do you have an interest in doing this, and report that back to you at the August 1st meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Did I make a
Madam
motion?
Clerk, did we have a motion on this?
Yes.
Made and second. All right, Dr. Johnson.
I'd like to ask the county manager, he's added all of these comments, and it appears to me that this study is going to put pressure on all of the fire districts to come up with a whole lot of information.
No, it's the information is coming from our own data source within our own database within county government. All they have to do is indicate to us whether they have a preference to move from the fire protection district to the service district, or if they don't, of the two that don't have anything, Bethel and Belvoir, what their preference is. Either stay as is, go to the fire protection, which is a vote of the people via referendum, or move towards the service district model that we're talking about here, which is a vote of the Board of Commissioners.
It just sounds to me like, Mr. Chairman, that this type of study is something that might take a year, and you've got to punch the right button on the computer to come up with all of this information.
I believe
Thank
the
you, Mr.
inference,
Chairman.
Tom, was that they'd have something back on August 1st meeting. Is that correct?
That's close.
Next report.
All right. Okay. Ready to vote? All right. Thank you. Next order of business.
Next you have on item number 2, and for items to decision, approval of 700 megahertz L-2 core ASTRO 25.
Have we done number 1?
How about debris,
Oh.
debris
No,
management?
sorry, we have not. I'm moving too quickly. Debris management plan.
Mr. Chairman, still here with you. Currently, Pitt County does not have a formal debris management plan. After Floyd, there was one that was developed. It was a very good plan, but it was utilized. And what we're trying to do with this plan is to get this actually formalized so that we can move forward with this. The debris management plan is a standalone plan. It's a companion plan to the emergency operation plan, and will be managed by a solid waste department if needed. John Demery's here with me today and has worked with us in the development of this along with Phil Dickerson. Plan includes steps to follow in the event Pitt County is impacted by an event. We normally look at it and we say it's a hurricane or a wind event, but it could be any type because we look at it as all hazards. It could be from a terrorist attack or anything like that. This follows up basically emergency protective actions. When we have a disaster that occurs, we're going to immediately go out and clear whatever roads we need to do to get our emergency vehicles responding and whatever emergency protective actions. This actually falls back into category A when we're actually coming back in and we've been declared and starting to receive some funds. With this one in here, in your agenda packet, there's a table of contents of the plan introduction, and the full plan and draft contact's been in the clerk's office for your review. I will tell you, too, there is a sample contract for vendors that would like to apply if we are declared and have a disaster, but that would come back for your approval.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we do approve this and partnering the relationship with communication through our local, state, and agency. I think this is a very, very good policy that we need to do. So I'm make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not, let's vote. All right, what's next?
Next is the item 2, which I had just introduced. That's the radio system proposal, and Noel Lee has a report on this. This is the major radio system we've been discussing for probably the past 24 months. 2 years, you as a board had appointed a radio project committee to hear this project, and we have a presentation now from Noel Lee on this.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we'd like to reintroduce you. They were here at a prior meeting. Sue Stingle with Federal Engineering, Bob Hamlin. So if you have any technical questions or additional questions as we move forward with this presentation, please by all means feel free. Also, we do have, well, I don't see Barry now, but there was representation from the Fire Association, and Bill sat on the committee, but Bill was not able to be at the last one, but he was there. Do have Motorola too present today. There's a lot of information that was presented to you, and I'll try to be very brief in this PowerPoint presentation, but try to answer any questions that you may have. What was the reason for us ever getting to where we're at today with the radio system? Number one, we'd had complaints with not having good reception throughout the county in certain places, but the biggest point that came is that we received an FCC requirement to narrowband the current VHF, and it also included UHF, but VHF was from a 25 megahertz system to a 12.5 megahertz system by January 1, 2013. Also in that, there should be further consideration that FCC is going to further require that migration or narrowbanding be moved down to 6 1/4. There's not a date that's been set for that. What were some of the actions that we have taken as of today? In March 2010, upon request, you voted to retain Federal Engineering to assist us with this project. In September of 2010, and from a recommendation from the project committee, Board of Commissioners approved for a 700 megahertz RFP, a request for proposal. November 2010, we released the RFP for any interested vendors. In February 2011, we received those RFPs and were open. In April of 2011, Board of Commissioners gave approval for Federal to negotiate with Motorola, and basically on a standalone system. May and June of 2011, FE negotiated with Motorola for 3 systems. Viper, which I think all of us are familiar with. ASTRO 25 Express was another system that Federal identified and asked Motorola to quote a price. It is a little bit larger or more than a Viper system, but less than the system that they had originally proposed, and that's the ASTRO 25 L2 configuration. Just to give you a little bit of prices and what FE has worked on, they worked on the Viper system, and basically from just a little bit short of $4 million, they got this one down to $3,585,000. The ASTRO 25 Express, it was an optional again system, and that was $3,632,000. The ASTRO 25 L2 configuration basically started off from the RFP proposal that Motorola proposed right at $5 million, it down to $3.9 million. So Federal has been working with this. What was Federal's recommendation? Federal recommends a radio system, and it's the 700 megahertz L2 core ASTRO 25 TDMA Phase 2. It's fully compliant with ABCO, that's the standards that we look at, P25 Phase 2 standards for public safety radio systems, and the TDMA provides immediate increased capacity for additional users and partners in long-term growth. They looked at the subscriber units because the subscriber units, or the actual mobiles or portables, is one of the largest costs into the system. And they said that we could look at either the APX 4000 or the 6000 portables. We did look at the APX 4000s, but we're not satisfied with those, and they will not be released until March of 2012. The APX 6500 mobile radios is the way that we felt that we needed to move forward with this. What are the project committee and county staff recommendations? They agree also that we looked at ASTRO 25 L2 system. We mix of subscriber units of having 40 control stations, 175 mobiles, which 61 being for EMS and 114 for fire. And when I say that, that's also broken down a little bit more. That's in a spreadsheet that you had attached to it. And then the portables, 525, and all these come with chargers and 12-hour batteries. Why? Reasons for recommendation. Own and control radio system. This system would actually be owned and controlled by the county, and that we could actually bring in partnering agencies, non-public safety entities. Guaranteed coverage area. With this system, Motorola will actually go out and guarantee the coverage area, which we were looking at as 95%. Again, I've already mentioned partnering agencies, and we do, and I'll have a little slide a little bit further back in here that I mentioned. It meets the needs and requirements for the day and for the future, and it provides ability to expand the system if needed. Finance. That was a big item, and I know it was discussed with you during the fiscal year 11-12 budget process and workshops, and there's more details within the background information from county staff in your agenda packet. But financing that we're still looking at is this radio system, the paging system, which we have released the RFP for that and estimated, and a 911 recorder that we feel will be paid for with 911 funds. Another item that we did have in here today is Amendment 4, the contract for Amendment 4 with Federal. Federal's original contract 1, 2, and 3, Phase 1, System Inventory Needs Assessment, Phase 2, VHF and alternate design, and Phase 3, A and B, being the RFP bid package generation procurement support. So we did actually have 3 different amendments with FE. We're looking for and asking for Phase 4 of Amendment 4. And that would ask, with your approval today of this system, to have Federal to come in to help us with the implementation, testing, acceptance. And it's based on time and material at an hourly rate with cost ceiling of $104,000, and the cost per hour was $155. FE will notify county if they come within 80% of that cost ceiling to either tell us we need to make some changes. The next item that I wanted to talk to you real quick about is partnering agencies. We as county staff have met with the different partnering agencies back in September of 2010 and again April 15th, 2011. In the April 15th meeting, 9 agencies attended. The county manager requested a letter of intent from agencies. Greenville, from their public works, actually gave us a letter of intent saying they do want to be part of this system for further consideration. PCMH and ECU plus several small agencies also expressed a verbal interest to partner with the county. Partnering agencies, what the county proposed is a subscription fee, and it's a monthly fee based on a number of subscriber units that an agency would have. It would help offset the payment. When I say help offset the payment, it's basically helping cover maintenance, the infrastructure of that, because they would still be required for all of the infrastructure as far as subscriber units and any other infrastructure that would be needed. So the recommendation in the agenda abstract have a fairly lengthy recommendation, but basically is to approve the ASTRO 25 L2 configuration, direct staff to finalize contract with Motorola for final Board of Commissioner approval August the 1st, and basically what that was asking that legal is able to work with Motorola's legal to finalize that contract for your approval, and approve contract amendment 4 with Federal Engineering. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer any questions that you.
All right, I believe Dr. Johnson wants to start it, and then we'll come right on around the line if you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lee, I on a continuing basis, I've expressed concern when important information is passed out at the last minute for us to consider, as you did. I wondered if you did not have that information before today that you could have distributed to the commissioners. Now, overall, I'm still concerned.
Dr. Johnson, I think everything that was in the PowerPoint presentation is just a summary of what's in the written.
Summary of information.
Written, it's in the abstract. All it is a summary.
Okay, thank you. I continue to be very concerned about federal mandates that counties spend a whole lot of money. This is a whole lot of money, folks. And it, according to Mr. Lee, it may be good for us. But it sounds like it's going to be real good. But I'm concerned about so much money being spent when we do have a shortage of money. And I just wondered if the process could be delayed somewhat until the financial picture is clearer. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Glenn.
On the subscriber fees, Noel, because I don't remember, do you have a number of what it's going to cost? My concern is more for the smaller department, even though it's going to be equitable based on your usership. Is it like maybe Gardnersville and some of them
what
smaller
we've done
ones?
in that one, Commissioner Webb, we went back in and we looked at what would be, fair and equal. That's been one of the things that we looked at. And sitting down and working with our county staff of trying to say, how do we do this? We went in and you mentioned Gardnerville, so we just look at Gardnerville. They actually have 5 pieces of equipment. So basically what we said, then they would need a mobile for each one of those trucks. All right, then we said, how many portables? And basically we said 2 per truck plus 6. So in that situation there, Gardnerville would actually receive 16 portables.
What's the feedback you're getting from the smaller departments?
As far as, no, there will be no fee for county.
No feedback.
Feedback. Basically, we had presented that, and Barry was there. Barry back in, he was actually representing the Fire Association, and I have not heard any feedback from them.
Commissioner Webb, the subscriber fee only applies to the partner agencies. It doesn't apply to any of the fire departments or EMS.
Okay.
So if Greenville goes with us, or GUC, or the town of Farmville, Fountain, whatever, but there's no subscriber fee for the fire and EMS for the 20 different
Detention
fire
center,
departments and the 10 EMS.
animal
So the
shelter.
smaller ones will get all the equipment they need to be able to.
Yes, that's
things
based on that
Well,
subscriber list.
And I would just stay as far away from Viper as you can. I like this better. Just because of the issues that we've had with it on the police side in the southern part of the county with Grifton and Aden having issues. So
Okay.
thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Jimmy.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I served on the committee, so we have been talking about this now for several months, and I agree with Commissioner Johnson. It is a lot of money, but at this point in time, we really don't have any choice, and our financial manager has outlaid a couple of options here about how we can fund this project. It has received considerable input from the Fire Association, and they are very supportive of this proposal. It's what federal engineering has recommended to us. So I think that it is appropriate that we move forward. Mr. Chairman, if it's the appropriate timing, I will make a motion. I make a motion that we approve this, and also we alter their contract to get the additional support we need.
A second.
I'll second it.
All right, Beth.
Second the motion.
Just one thing that I'd like for you to just kind of explain so the citizens can hear it. Under reasons for recommendation, the first one is that we'll own and control the radio system. That's for the entire county. What is that now, in just a few words? In other words,
currently right
what do
now-
we own and what do we control?
Currently, our VHF system, we do own and control that one, but in comparison to the Viper, that is a state-owned system that we have to work underneath.
And the Viper is also in the county. Is
Yes,
my
ma'am.
point. In other words, we have different
There are different
ways of
systems.
communicating systems now.
Yes, ma'am.
And we own some and we control some, but this way we will own and control all, which also means that in the future, we will have to deal with replacements and upgrades and all of that for all of it.
For at some point in time, but with
Well,
this,
I'm just
yes,
saying,
ma'am.
we will be responsible for that.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
And it is also interoperable between all the systems too.
With this, I'm not familiar how it operates. Will this operate with a central tower or?
Motorola has presented a single site system here in the county,
Okay.
and if the single site system does not work, that is part of their contract, and they would have to make it work.
Okay, we had to pay them rent for this tower?
No, sir, this is tower we own at Wintergreen. Well, let me back up, that we lease, that's complicated.
It's a tower on county property at Wintergreen School that we will eventually own the tower, but it's under lease to
Crown Castle.
Crown Castle, yes.
Not gonna get any cheaper, is it?
No, sir. I think from the,
Huh?
no, sir.
How long are these units guaranteed for?
When you say guaranteed, I'm hoping we're looking at 15 to 20 years at a
I'm
minimum.
talking about
Warranty period.
the
Warranty period. Warranties-
upkeep.
We have, the actual warranty is 1 year with 2 years maintenance is built into the original contract.
And again, we're hoping in the next no banding exercise, it could be 2018, 2019. Right now, we're going from 25 megahertz to 12.5. We're expecting the FCC to issue another mandate to go down to 6.25. This equipment will be compliant with that, so we don't have to go out and buy another radio system.
This should take us.
I'd just like to see how Melanie's gonna let us finance it.
What we had discussed was, this year there'd be a $25,000 interest-only payment due, but in the following fiscal year, for fiscal year 12-13, I think we were looking at $450,000 was the first principal and interest. That was approximate, it would be thereabouts. We were proposing to use the 27th payroll that we had to fund this year. It'll actually come as freed capacity in the new fiscal year for a year from now, so we were proposing to tap that as one potential option as a funding source.
What are your other options?
Well, other options, but they're not preferable, would be the tax increase or.
How much increase would it take to fund this per year on your rate?
A penny yields about 1.1 million, so probably a little less than a penny, half a penny.
Ephraim, did you finish?
I'm finished.
Oh, excuse me. Melvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as Commissioner Garris alluded to, he and I served on this committee, and we did a lot of extensive work in this regard. This is a federal requirement, and I think we have to meet this mandate by 2012. Is that 2013
January?
2013, and so with the manager recognizing the funding source, it's something that we have to do, and I think that in doing this and do diligently, along with the necessary resources that we had to work with, this is certainly, that's the reason I second that motion. It's certainly something that we need to do, and the funding source has been identified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Well, the funding source for me is not a tax increase. I'm not voting for one. Mr. Manager, what other sources do you have besides increasing taxes?
Well, we identified the preferred funding source is utilizing the 27th payroll period. Normally, there's 26 payroll periods for the county employees in a year's time. This year, because of the way the calendar falls, every 11 years you have to have an extra payroll period. So this year, in fiscal year 11-12, we actually have 27 payroll periods. Because of that, when we budget in the following fiscal year for 12-13, we'll only have to budget back to 26 payroll periods. So we'll have that freed up capacity that will be created as.
How much money is that approximately?
I think we said that was 1.6
million.
So that would really solve that problem for what, 3 years?
Well, no, the year.
It'll be ongoing.
It'll be ongoing for the entire year of the debt service.
That.
Correct.
I know it's needed, but at the same time, you got to be able to pay for it. I have no further.
Dave, you got any questions? All right, he didn't hear me, okay. I want to thank the committee that worked on this. Scott and his staff and Noel and all of that. I've got some strong reservations about myself about how to vote on this. The FCC, of course, gave us a mandate, and as Dr. Johnson alluded to, a mandate without the funds to do it with. What concerns me in addition to that is that within a year and a half, January 1, 2013, you're going to have technology that's going to have a year and a half down the road, which you're going to have to upgrade. I know you have in here that narrow band in this might go to 6.5. But the main thing that concerns me is the fact that we've got Congress sitting up there now with failure to approve or lift the borrowing power, so that within August the 1st, if you got your Speaker of the House and your President do not get together with the committees, that you're going to have a disaster because there's going to be non-payment of dates federally non-dates of payment. I know we can't live in fear, but I've seen a lot of bankruptcies, and I've seen a lot of people that cannot make their payments. And I don't want to obligate for funds when I don't think we're going to have the money. And if you don't believe that the lack of the ability to borrow by the federal government, that's what we've been living with for 10 years. If you don't believe that the lack of the ability to borrow is going to trickle down, you think Reagan trigonometry was a lot to deal with, that would be a joke compared to what that would be. So having that been said, and we've all discussed, we're ready to vote, and I'm going to vote no on this. You ready to vote? Thank you. What's next, Mr. Manager?
Next, you have item number 4, approval to purchase capital item for EMS system improvement. We have Noel Lee.
All right, Noel.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the EMS Oversight Committee had asked us to develop a fleet management plan. This fleet management plan was not adopted, but was worked together, working within county staff and some of the nonprofit organizations. And it was presented at the last Oversight Committee. Did not receive approval of that proposal at the May meeting, but is planned to be brought back up for adoption of that fleet management plan in July. From the time that we met in May, we were notified by Select Customs out of Falkland that they had a remount that they had in production that was going to actually be a demo. Within our fleet management plan, one of the trucks in the first series of replacement, that box could not be refurbished. So we were going to need to look for a box that would be refurbished, mounted on a cab and chassis. So we were able to identify that actual vehicle. And since it was after the May meeting, I actually sent out emails to all the EMS Oversight Committee to see if there was a favorable response of whether we should try to move forward with this. Knowing that we couldn't do this without Board of Commissioner approval, the EMS Oversight Committee did give us the approval to move forward, and this is why we're bringing this agenda to you today. Finance does say that the funds are available. We just need to move those around. What we're asking for, and the actual quote is listed here today, along with the fleet management plan, of an ambulance for $89,998 to move forward with this. We're also in anticipation that we will continue to have this fleet management program passed by the Oversight Committee and bring back to you. We would also like to advertise for 2 additional remounts and to put those bids out. So basically right now what we're looking for, Mr. Chairman, is move that the Board of Commissioners approve the purchase of the Chevy ambulance from Select Customs Apparatus of Falkland for $89,998 with associated budget amendment, and also recommend that staff be directed to advertise for 2 additional remounts.
In sight of the fact of that some of this, I believe, if I read correctly and listen correctly, has not been approved by the Oversight Committee. I want Mr. Gash to see if this is what he thinks we need to do.
This has been approved by the Oversight Committee as far as the survey that you sent us the emails on, and you got a positive response. So it is consistent, and Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve the request.
Second.
Any questions? If not, let's vote. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, what's next, Mr. Mann?
All right, next you have item number 4, items decision, consideration of additional funding for the Winterville Volunteer Fire Department. This is on page 154 of your agenda package, and this item has been placed on here at the request of Commissioner Johnson. Basically, as you recall, through the budget process, the Winterville Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department, was one of 5 who had requested a tax increase through the budget process. The other 4 were approved. This one was not. They in the last fiscal year, they had a 2.5-cent tax for their department. They requested a 4-cent tax, thus a $0.015 increase. The value of that $0.015 is $59,769. Since that time, there's been a bit of communication between my office as well as Mr. Lee's to the Winterville Volunteer Fire Department, asking a number of questions about what is the effect of not receiving the $0.015 increase, how could you adjust your budget, and now today where the request by Commissioner Johnson is to place this on the agenda for your consideration as to whether you would want to either take out of your contingency, which you have $100,000 budgeted, or whether you want to take out of fund balance to fund the $59,000 or some portion thereof to the department.
Dr. Johnson?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we appropriate $59,769 to the Winterville Rural Fire Department so that they will not have to sell equipment in order to make it through this current year. I'm very concerned that we apply pressure to volunteers, and most of our fire departments, everyone is volunteer. Now, I think this Winterville Rural has to hire one person, and there are other fire departments who hire one person to stay on duty to crank up the truck and go. But I would move that we appropriate this money.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second it reluctantly.
All right. Any discussion now? Beth, you want to say something? Jim?
I just, we have not heard since we voted on our budget from the fire department in Winterville or the rural fire department relative to this one way or the other. I've not. And we have heard from them in the past. So I probably will not support the motion because the money's not there. I mean, I don't know where it'll come from.
Mr. Chairman, the county manager has heard, and Noel Lee has heard, and he's in charge of the total situation, and I don't think that it should be expected that the Winterville Rural Fire Department would contact any commissioners. So it just appears to me that the appropriate people have received the information.
Mr. Chairman.
Can I just say that I was basing my comment on the fact that I did hear from all of them at budget time, so they, and many of us on the board did, so that was my comment.
Ms. James?
I don't think we've got $59,000 to get to every department in Pitt County.
Okay,
You've got to treat us all alike.
Mr. Gash?
Mr.
They
Chairman,
get themselves in that hook. That's tough.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some concerns about this request. I am very supportive of the Winterville Rural Fire Department. I hope they know that. But I really thought that we had resolved this issue not to everybody's satisfaction when we went through our budgeting process. This board voted not to grant the tax increase for Winterville, and I felt like they were working towards implementing their program this year in spite of that hardship that I know that they were going to have. But, and again, the primary focus was on this reevaluation process to make sure that we got the insurance rates back to a 6, and then we could tell the citizens of the Winter Fire District, this is a positive thing that we have accomplished, and a tax increase next year would be surely more palatable in light of that positive comment. So that piece concerns me. The second thing that concerns me is that if we start taking money from the general fund or from contingency or from wherever and supplementing the fire department taxes, if we start doing that, we're going to establish a precedent, and I would strongly suspect that some of the other fire departments will be coming up here requesting the same thing. The third thing that concerns me is we don't have any general fund money in the general fund to do this. Now, we have all stated that we are concerned about the current balance of our general fund because over the last several years, it has gone from the 18 to 19% range down to the 13 to 14% range. And we have all stated that it is our desire and commitment to get that fund balance back up. Therefore, we don't need to be spending money out of the fund balance. Now, the fourth point I'd like to make is that if we were to do this and take it out of contingency, which was one of the options that Commissioner Johnson stated in the agenda abstract, if we take it out of contingency, that is a possibility. We have $100,000 in contingency. If you look at how we have spent contingency over the last 2 years, in the year 9 and 10, we had $100,000 in contingency. We spent $60,000. I got these numbers from Melanie. So we had a balance of $40,000 to give back to the general fund. Last year, in 10 and 11, we had $100,000 in contingency, and we spent $43,000. So we were able to give back $57,000 to the general fund. So based upon those 2 years, the last 2 years, there may be a possibility that we could get this money from contingency. However, if we do, if we were to agree to do that today and take essentially $60,000 from the contingency fund, then what we are as a board would be committing to is that we are only going to have $40,000 in contingency for the rest of this year. And that concerns me because that contingency is in there for unexpected things that may come up, not ongoing operating expense. And this, of course, is ongoing operating expense. They are the concerns that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. Tom?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we have a rural fire department that, according to what they presented at budget time and what they have presented to the county manager and to Noel Lee since that time, cannot operate for the current year and fight fires as we expect them to unless they have additional funding. The primary part of this proposed 59,769 is a payment on a truck. Several years ago, they purchased the truck, and they have annual payments that must be made. And this year is one of those years that the payment has to be made. And we have had a history, Mr. Garris wants to speak of history. We have had a history of EMS units stopping what they were doing. The county now must operate and pay for an EMS unit at Pactolus, an EMS unit at Bethel. And it appears to me that if we don't fund the minimum, and this 59,769 is the minimum, if we don't fund the minimum, we might end up with a fire department to fund the whole department. And I just don't think that that's something that we want to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about this?
Yes.
Ethan?
Probably from a standpoint of my thinking, I don't like it in a way that some might view it as setting a precedent to other departments. I was under the impression when Wilmington Fire Department met with us up here that they were going to work it out, but evidently this has not come about. Like Mr. Johnson said, I don't want us to get into the fire department business of having to own a fire department, hiring one.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jim? Yes, sir.
I'm representing the Wilmington Fire Department.
Yes.
I'll make a couple of comments.
All right, just 1 minute. All right, Jimmy, go.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree that we as a county cannot afford to take over a fire department, and we surely don't want to do that. But I have not been told that if we don't grant this revenue, that the Winnable Rural Fire Department is going to shut down. Has anybody told us that?
No.
No.
All right, so go ahead.
My name is B.L. Harris. I've been the treasurer for the fire department since the inception of the fire tax, which has been 20-plus years. And I just wanted to, some of the facts that y'all have mentioned, I don't think you've heard the whole side of it. When we had a budget meeting, we had a $52,000 grant in pending with the state, and we have received that grant now, but we're not going to be able to fund it. That's a 50-50 grant. And we're not going to be able to fund that grant if we don't have these additional funds. Plus, by the recommendation we got from the board about the ISO rating, we spent $50,000 in equipment and stuff in order to get this ISO rating as low as we could get it. But the commissioners are just like we don't know what the finding is, and you'll find out as soon as we find out. So, you know, this is the situation we're in. But we're not going to close the fire department down. We might have to tighten up some belts, and we may lose the grant, but we're going to still keep on operating.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate your information.
Thank you.
You got something to say there?
I just wanted to ask and make sure
Come back 1 more minute, please, sir.
That I wanted to make sure I understood. I feel sure I did. That if this 59,000 went, then it would be used to match funds for a grant.
Yes, ma'am.
Not for payment on a fire truck.
Well, once it gets into pot, you know, it's going, in other words, we needed approximately $60,000 to fund the budget that we turn in, and we worked long hours on that budget to trim it down as close as we could get it. And going back to past budgets, this is about the same amount we spent this past year in the budget.
Right.
But
And
we
this
do
was-
have this fire truck payment that'll go on for 7 more years.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe the manager wants to comment.
Yes, if I could. J.D. Lawrence, who's the president for the Winterville Rural, right after the board had, I guess, denied the tax increase, had communicated to me the possibility of the rural's intent of not continuing the automatic aid agreement with the town of Winterville, as well as possibly selling some of the rural's equipment. Both actions could have a direct impact on the town's ISO rating. If they're not their automatic aid, then their ISO rating would be negatively effective in not having the second line, which I believe the rules act as a second line for the town. So we've been going back and forth, and I'd asked J.D., Mr. Lawrence, if he had any written confirmation from the town that they were willing to not have the rule be be automatic aid for them, and then also what the cost savings would be in selling the equipment. The most recent email I got from him, I'm adding up maybe about $35,000 in cost savings, but if the rule is not acting as automatic aid for the town, it could be possible a $500,000 cost to them and a second line truck, I believe, is what was portrayed by the former town manager probably 2 years ago. So I'd want to throw that on the table and not have that not be mentioned in the course of this discussion.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
The city of Greenville is giving them automatic aid, and that's the only automatic aid they need. We were mandated by the county to give them automatic aid so it wouldn't cause them any financial hardship. But City of Greenville is giving them financial aid, and they have hook and ladder, they have more equipment than we have. So they wouldn't lose anything by us just discontinuing giving them automatic aid.
So if we don't give them automatic aid, how much would that save Winnable? The winter fire district?
I've not been involved with that other than hearing JD said it looks like it's hard to put a figure on that, because if we have a $170,000 budget, it costs $175,000 if we don't even leave the station, other than fuel cost. So that's an argumentative statement, but I'd say a third of our calls, a third or 40% of them are associated with detainment. And 95% of the time when we go out, when we get to the scene, we are turned around and sent right back. So we don't even function. We just go out and come back. And it gets kind of bad when you get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and go to a fire, and then you turn around and come back. It goes back to the wolf syndrome. You holler wolf long enough, and we have a lot of bad calls from Fred's Beds. They got a bad alarm system. And it's going to get to where these people are going to say, well, you know, that's Fred's Beds, because they got a pager. This is Fred's Beds again. Just go back to sleep. It's a bad call. But we get those all the time.
Mr. Harris, in J.D. Lawrence's email to me, he said that by stopping the automatic aid with the town of Winterville, you'd save $15,000 a year. So could you take that $15,000 off the $59,769 for a net of $44,769?
No, like I just told you, it costs us the same thing to operate that fire department, whether we give the town of Winterville automatic aid or not. The only thing we would save would be the fuel. We got to have the same fire trucks, we got to have the same personnel, same turnout gear, same insurance, same everything. We got to have all that.
But what does it cost when you go out and turn around and come back? What does a trip like that cost?
It would cost
based on the people that get on the truck.
It costs the fuel and the wear and tear on the truck and your personnel, which you're not paying your personnel. But
what I mean, is there an estimate of that amount?
Hey, it's just hard to even put a figure on something like that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we've been talking about this, and what we've come down to is, again, between the town of and the rural department.
He said they were not.
What do we want to do on the motion? Anybody need the motion reread? Everybody understand the motion?
Correctly.
Yes.
What?
The motion was to approve it.
All right. Ready to vote? Okay, what's next?
Next, you have we already dealt with Parker's Landing lease arrangement. You then have item 6, encroachment agreement with NCDOT of Phil Dickerson.
Everybody understand that?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Ready to vote? Thank you, Phil. I believe you're next up, Phil. We thought we'd start you out right.
Okay, great. The next is recommendation of performance contractor to do an additional energy savings contract in county buildings. A lot of you are familiar with this. Basically, the improvements will finance the cost. The savings will finance the cost of improvements over 12, 15 years would be what we're looking at this time. The great part about this is it will allow us to fix some things that are not working too well. For example, we have high humidity in the courthouse, and this will fix that. The thing that the decision needs to be made today is whether to go ahead with this or not. You have some general idea of what it will.
Mr. Garris, did you want to make some motion?
Yes. Again, this was one of the committees that the board appointed me to sit on, and we have listened extensively to this contractor and another contractor, and both of them were very good. However, Siemens is the one that we have been working with, and we did not see a compelling reason to change contractors. So I make a motion that we approve Siemens as the contractor for the next period.
I second it.
And before you vote on that, you haven't completed your last
All
one.
right, let's clear that up. Tom, do you need to vote?
Right, that was
Now we're ready?
Yes, thank you.
Now,
All right, we've had a motion made and seconded. Everybody understand? Ready to vote? Thank you. Thank you, Phil. What's next?
Okay, next you have two appointments. You have appointment to the Local Firemen's Relief Fund Board. You need to get, yeah, 9-0 possible.
They got it.
And on that one, on page 173, you have one person being the son of Alton B. Clements, Sr.
Have a motion for that?
I
So
move
moved.
that we appoint the son,
Second.
Alton Clemens.
No other motions, let's vote. Okay. Number 9, is that it?
Yes, item 9 is a recommendation from Greenville City Council that Kurt Davis be appointed for a first of a 3-year term to the Pitt Greenville Convention Visitors Authority.
I move that we accept the recommendation of Kurt Davis.
And
Second.
vote on your last one first. That's not finished.
Go, Jim.
Thank you.
I second that one.
No other motions, let's vote. No other nominations, rather. Gene, get Dave down there.
Okay.
You hit it one.
All right.
Hit yes.
And voted yes.
Yes. Okay. What's the next order of business?
Closed session.
It has been suggested that this board move into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 and A1 to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the laws of this state or the United States, and under 3, to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
Motion to go into closed session.
All right, let's vote. While they're clearing out, we'll go into it just a moment.